Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Network. My name is Jared Pruger. I'm joined with my good friend and podcast host, Kevin Quigley. Kevin, Penn State welcomed Illinois with open arms into Beaver Stadium and sent them packing with a nice, brutal shove right out of the gates of Beaver Stadium and back to Illinois with a pretty one-sided victory for the Nittany Lions. They handled business in a multitude of different ways outside of special teams, and we'll get to that later on in the show. But Penn State comes out. It's a 21-7 game. They win by 2 scores. They dominate defensively outside of the first drive. And all in all, Penn State has a ranked win at Beaver Stadium once again.
Yeah, and credit to the fans. The whiteout-esque energy that was called for early in the week, the fans took it and ran with it, and the fans really impacted the game, especially in the. They kind of got quieted after the first drive because that first drive was pathetic from a defensive standpoint, but the fans really woke up. Penn State goes down and scores on their first drive as well. The fans kind of get back into it, and then that's when Penn State's defense really took over, and that's when Illinois started having troubles. The crowd was in it. They couldn't get the plays in. There was bad communication for Illinois, false starts, timeouts. So I think a lot of credit for this off the field goes to the fans for. I mean, pretty much everybody in the stands was wearing white, from what I could see. So,
yeah, without a doubt. Walking into the stadium, I went through the tailgate lots after talking with some buddies of mine, and I was up near the stadium for team arrival, and it was packed. It was 2, 3, 4 deep from the ropes all the way to the sidewalks and even into the tailgate lots. The atmosphere was incredible. That's Beaver Stadium. That's a night game at Beaver Stadium. I don't know that they even needed to wear white, to be honest with you. They could have just shown up wearing whatever. I do want to give a shout out to the dude that I saw that clearly looked like he pissed himself. He did not have a great day, it seemed. He also had ketchup and mustard stains. But the whiteout energy gets to other people, not just the opponents. But yeah, they were a big factor, and they played a great game as a result. And when you have that type of atmosphere and you're able to have that type of impact in the game, it's a great thing for your defense. Now, Illinois came out firing on all cylinders. They took advantage of Penn State really being aggressive early on that first drive. And then the game came to the Nittany Lions. And defensively, from the point where they gave up that 75-yard touchdown drive to start the game, they allowed only 144 total yards the remainder of the game. 39 yards, if you want to get more specific, from that 1st and 2 at the 2. When Illinois started to go backwards, they went 20 yards backwards, and then in the second half, they had 59 yards of total offense. That is a dominant performance. Offensively, they did just enough. The running game was incredible. You had Katron Allen and Nicholas Singleton, who averaged combined 5.8 yards per carry. Bo Perpola also averaged 5.8 yards a carry, and Drew Aller also had quite a heavy load when he ran as well. And when you're able to do that, good things typically happen. Did they leave some points on the scoreboard? Yes, they did. But again, they came in, handled business against the number 19 ranked team in the country, and it's a ranked win that nobody expected Penn State to have, solely because I think people underestimated the Fighting Illini prior to the season.
Yeah, just one last thing on the fans. 14th highest attended game ever at Beaver Stadium for an Illinois night game. Like that's bonkers. But do the offense leave points on the board? Absolutely. And it felt like, I'm not even talking about the two missed field goals. We're going to get to that. Hopefully there's somebody else on the roster or Sander figures it out, because wide left and then wide right, just a simple overcorrection. The kicks are plenty long enough. I mean, those things are 3/4 of the way up the uprights on 45-yard field goals. Like, the kid's got a leg. It's just the accuracy. There's 2 parts of a vector, speed and direction. He's got the speed. He just doesn't have the direction down right now. On offense, though, it seemed like every time they put the ball in Nick Singleton or Katron Allen's hands, there was one missed tackle away from a house call. Like every one of those runs, they were getting to the third level of Illinois' defense, and if the safety or the cornerback or the linebacker who was pursuing from the weak side of the play, if they didn't make that tackle, it's 75 yards, it's 60 yards, it's whatever yards left to the end zone. That's how far they were going to run. So I think there's a lot of positives to pull from that offensively because, sure, they only put up 21 points. I do want to talk about the fourth down plays, though. I mean, 4th and 1 or 4th and 3, whatever the hell it was, and we're passing. I think Penn State was averaging 6.8 yards a carry at that point when they went for it on 4th and 1 or 4th and 3. I can't remember which time it was, and they threw the ball from an empty set field. Like, why? You're averaging nearly 7 yards a carry. Even if you are going to pass it, at least put out a run formation and pass from the run formation. Why are we? That felt like the 4th and 5 call with Ohio State at midfield. Like passing it there felt like running it on the 4th and 5 call against Ohio State because you put the ball in Nick Singleton's hand and it was 7 yards. Like just didn't matter to me. Put Tyler Warren back there in the Wildcat. And you still have that threat to pass if you want to pass on 4th and 3. But I just don't get that. Well, they did do the Wildcat on 4th and 5 or whatever, or 4th and 7, and that was the trick play on 4th down that was not for me. But 4th and 1 or 3, maybe we do go for it. But yeah, offense looked. I mean, Drew Allar's 15 and 21 for 135 yards, like nearly 10 yards of completion there. Nothing there. I think 374 yards of offense and 21 points it's a good performance. That's a performance that usually comes with more points.
Right. And that's the other thing too, is, they left a lot of points on the board, and we're going to talk in the second segment about the bad of Saturday night. But again, Penn State showed out defensively. Abdul Carter was a monster. Zane Durant was a monster. Kobe King made some plays. And then you obviously got the interception too. It should have been a house call. The defense left points on the table as far as I'm concerned on that, with the absolutely awful block in the back by Zion Tracy.
Terrible decision.
On AJ Harris's pick 6. But and that's the other thing. We'll talk about another thing. We can talk about the penalties. But again, Penn State just came out and they handled their business. They didn't let Illinois get comfortable. Altmaier was never a factor. And they just made plays when they needed to make plays. You look at the way that things broke down after that first drive. Illinois looked good. They come out on firing on all cylinders, taking advantage of Penn State playing man defense. So those when you're playing outside leverage like that, you're gonna give up slants. You're gonna give up maybe some inside routes, and then you just gotta be able to make plays. And Penn State came out playing a lot of man. They match up well man to man against many teams across the country, and definitely against Illinois. But they just came out and Illinois out executed them, and then they dialed it in, and Illinois really never sniffed scoring outside of that missed field goal. Really, the remainder of the game, and when you're able to put on a style of play or a game like that, that's a really great job by the Penn State Nittany Lions.
Yeah, and if you look at the game, a lot of those drives just took minutes off the clock. Like Penn State only had 9 possessions, and Illinois, I think, only had 8. So it was a very quick, very short game. Defense after the first drive really settled in. I really loved, and I even tweeted up, I was like, Abdul Carter is not a defensive end. I think he can play defensive end in scenarios. Abdul Carter's a football player. Him and Jalen Reed. Only they're just football players. And I love having the flexibility when KJ Winston's back, when KJ Winston's healthy, of Jalen Reed playing playing the nickel back, and he can go be a football player. And Abdul Carter, if he's not rushing the passer every down, he gets to go be a football player because he had that critical pass breakup late in the game because he was out there being a football player. He was reading the play. He was being the spy on Altmaier, which is what they needed. And he gets to go look, where is Altmaier going to throw? And what's the one passing lane where we might be vulnerable? And I think that's when the defense is most successful. Not literally like on an ad lib, but like let your really intelligent football players do really intelligent football player things. Like Abdul Carter, he's a first round NFL draft pick at being an absolute wild card on defense. You got to let him go be a wild card. And the position change to me is mostly like contract money in the NFL. Like,
Yeah, I think
linebacker does not pay as much as defensive end as pass rusher. It doesn't pay as much in the franchise tag, and we've seen it in the contracts that linebackers get versus pass rushers get. Pass rushers get bigger contracts. They want to put him in that position. He's probably asked for it because he sees the pay discrepancy there. I don't know. I'm not accusing him of doing it for monetary reasons, but he is most successful doing whatever the hell he wants to disrupt every play possible. Him and Tony Rojas, you could let them just be a double spy, and I don't think any offense would ever get a first down. And hell, throw Jalen Reed out there. Throw all three of them out there doing whatever the hell they want because all three of them are very smart football players. Tony Rojas pulls out of his pass rush and catches up to Luke Altmaier. If Tony Rojas doesn't sense that he's leaving the pocket and doesn't immediately drop back to go start pursuing, Altmaier runs for a first down there. Instead, Illinois is forced to punt because it was 3rd and 10, and he stops him for a 3-yard gain. Like, they have 3 very high IQ football players, and they just need to let them do football player things. I think that, like, that's my issue with Tom Allen. Is Tom Allen is just way too structured, 4-man pass rushes all day long. Why were they successful in the second half? Because they started rushing Altmaier. They didn't just drop back because, quite frankly, the secondary is not good enough to play as tight man coverage as they want to do.
Yeah, and I mean the biggest thing they did was that they wore out Illinois' offensive line. They got them out of their game, and I think that's the biggest thing. You know, Carter was able to play up a linebacker a little bit as well. So mixing and matching him, I think, is going to be even more impressive. It's very hard to compare him to Micah Parsons, but there are some parallels there. Utilizing him, much like the Cowboys utilize Micah Parsons, is a good thing because he can be that type of player. He's a little thicker than Micah Parsons is as far as his build. But again, he's athletic. That last drive of the game for Illinois, he had a forced fumble and a sack and just wreaked complete chaos and havoc in that backfield and made Altmaier super uncomfortable. That's exactly what you need. Sometimes you're not always going to get the stats, but he got the stats and he got that type of havoc, and that's huge for the defensive line. Now, do they have some times where they play uncharacteristic football, where they get bad tackling angles, bad lanes, and play outside of the defense? Yes, and that's exactly what happened on the first drive. After that, things tightened up, and then Illinois, in the second half, didn't cross midfield, and that to me, actually, they didn't cross midfield other than one drive after. I'm sorry, 2 drives after the touchdown. Every other drive, 5 out of their 7 drives after that, ended in Illinois territory, which is completely absurd, and that includes the scoring drive where they're not the field goal attempt at the end of the second quarter, where they had the ball 1st and 2 at the 2, first down, 1st and goal from the 2, and then ended up having to kick a 40-yard-ish field goal.
Yeah, and To go back to your Micah Parsons Abdul Carter comparison, it's easy to do. I think Micah Parsons is a much better pure pass rusher. Abdul Carter does a lot better in, I don't want to call him stunts because if he's spying, he's not really stunting, but that delayed pass rush, he finds that one gap in the offensive line and he has the athleticism to get home almost every time or disrupt the pass or knock it down or make the quarterback pump fake, whatever. It's disruptive when he plays it that way. Whereas Micah Parsons is much better, especially in the NFL, at just being a pure pass rusher because Abdul Carter doesn't get off the ball very well. I noticed that last night. He does not get off the ball very well, and he had that false start not the false start, the offsides. So I don't like him being a downed defensive end. I let him be 2-point stance, a yard or two off the ball, and make the offense figure out where he is on defense.
The beauty in Abdul Carter is the fact that he's only 4 games into playing defensive end. That is huge. He will continue to grow. He's only, I think, scraping the surface. But we're going to talk a little bit more about what Penn State can improve on when we come back for the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the second segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. I'm Jared. He's Kevin. Kevin, it wasn't pretty, or as pretty as some might like. The kicking game and Sanders Sahaydak has got to improve. I would imagine that changes, that he is no longer going to be playing there following what they did. Obviously, Barker comes in, kicks that extra point there late, and that's a pretty telltale sign that the job is no longer Sahaydak's. So they left points there. They got to finish drives. And to me, in games like this, it's so easy to overthink things and kind of question or wonder if it's going to work. You mentioned that 4th down play. Penn State goes empty set after just absolutely gashing Illinois on the ground to get to that point. And they run just a simple banana route really towards the flat or into the flat with Fleming, and the route is short to the sticks. Drew Aller had little to no time to throws off his back foot, and they turn the ball over on downs. They just run the football. Obviously, the gadget play, the Warren Cat, and it's a RPO to Katron Allen, I thought was bizarre. But again, it's just one of those situations where you just got to go out and execute. But I think a lot of times coordinators overthink things, and that's human nature. You're built to overthink, and when you overthink, things tend to not go your way because you question it. You don't have confidence in what you call. And it's hindsight's obviously 2020. So I mean, you want to make sure you get that first down. You want to make sure that you extend these drives, and you want to make sure that you're not chasing the chains, but you're staying ahead of them. And for them, I thought Kotelnicki just kind of overthought a little bit at certain points. Now in the second half, they just fed the running backs, and it worked out, right? I mean, Singleton had 94 yards on the ground. Katron Allen had 102 yards on the ground. Each had a touchdown. So I mean, there's some really good play. But when you look at the grand scheme of things, there are definitely a lot of things that you can clean up. The penalties, again, are another one too. There could have been 2 Abdul Carter offsides. One was declined. The other one, obviously, in the fourth quarter, kept things alive just a little bit for the Fighting Illini. But again, still a very good win, but obviously room for improvement.
Yeah, and I can't remember. I think it was in the first or the second quarter. Penn State's rolling, and they ended up punting. And because, let's see, they ended the drive in 3 straight run plays. So Katron runs for 12, Drew passes for 5, Katron runs again for 12, Drew gets sacked, and then there's 2 incompletions. They were rolling on offense, and then they just go 3 straight passes. I mean, second 11, yeah, you're behind on the chains, but they actually threw a sack, completion, incomplete pass. 3rd and 4 at that time, like go for it, like run the ball. You're right, Kodal Nicky. This is his first big game at Penn State, and probably his first. I mean, at Kansas, he did have a lot of quote unquote meaningful games, but he didn't have any games as a top 10 ranked team in the country where you have the target on your back every week that you play, and you're gonna get every team's best shot. And I think this is good for him to get this under his belt and look at maybe what he could do better. Because sometimes you just got to stick with what's rolling. One thing I do want to see coming out of this is Tyler Warren in a single back formation. Just put 44 back there, or put him in the I formation, give him a fullback dive. Because if I'm a linebacker, 6'6", 260s barreling through the hole, there's a business decision to be made there. And I don't know many people who are flying through the hole like Robert Spillane in college.
Yeah, Tyler Warren, I think, is one of the most complete players in the nation. I think he's tight end number 1. He's really good. He's got really solid hands, can run, can do a lot of different things, right? And it's kind of the beauty of Tyler Warren. And Penn State's been fortunate over the last few years. Mike Gesicki, Jesse James, even Pat Fryermuth, Brenton Strange, and Theo Johnson. Tyler Warren is the next in line for a great tight end at Penn State, and he is doing everything possible. The offense kind of runs through him. But when you have weapons like he and Allen and Singleton, that's a really good thing for the offense to have and for Penn State to have at its disposal. So, I mean, when you're able to do that, it makes life a lot simpler at times, but also makes life a lot different knowing that you have those tools. You want to make everybody happy, and then you get certain situations where Bo Prabula comes in and it wasn't used a lot on Saturday night, and I think that's really good. I'm not a big fan in certain instances. A lot of times that can really interrupt the flow of certain things. But again, Penn State still gets out of there with a win, but that game could have easily been in the 30s as far as points go if things just kind of go their way on special teams. And that's, again, something that's going to be addressed, and they get back to the drawing board against UCLA. But the biggest thing, and the only thing that really matters, is that they're 4-0. They climbed a couple spots in the poll. They're at number 7 now, thanks in large part to Ole Miss laying an egg against Kentucky. But again, there's just so much more that can happen. And for Penn State, they're in a great spot. That was a game, to me, nobody expected Illinois to be ranked at this point in the season. When we had our preview show about them, we wouldn't have foreseen that happen. So that's an added game in addition to, guess what? You're going to get the Ohio State and whoever else the rest of the year, USC as well in a couple weeks. But again, they made the most of the situation. The crowd was a big factor, and they escaped with the win.
Yeah, and I think we don't put the microscope on the defense if the offense is more successful on their drives. Granted, the offense could have been successful on 5 out of 9 drives, and I think offensive success is a drive worth 30 yards or more, or has at least 3 first downs. And for the most part, Penn State's offense had successful drives. They had 5 chances to score. And once the defensive jitters got out of the way, Illinois in the second half only had 59 yards, 78 yards passing, and minus 19 yards rushing. So just total domination. You said it. They're up 2 spots in the rankings going into USC in 2 weeks. UCLA coming to town this weekend. So, So the score disappointing? Yeah, 21-7. That game was way too close for comfort. It never really felt like Illinois had a chance to win, but Penn State was letting them kind of sit around. And one bad play by Penn State puts them either behind 7 or it's a tie game. So, yeah, they just got to clean it up. And it's the Big Ten. We got to clean up the kicking because, as we saw last night, it's going to matter in a close Big Ten game. And if you have a 42-yard field goal, you need to make it. And I think Zahedek is 2 of 5 career from beyond 40, which in big-time college football and D1, I think it was Central Michigan kicked a 60-yard field goal yesterday. Like, there's talent out there. And no offense to Sander, but I mean, 2 for 5 is just not going to get it done, especially not at Penn State in the Big Ten as the number 7 ranked team in the country who's looking for a playoff berth. Like, that's not going to get it done.
Absolutely. And I think the other thing too is looking ahead, things are going to start sorting themselves out ahead of Penn State in the rankings as well if they can maintain their position. And currently, they're number 7. Ahead of them is Oregon. Then you've got Georgia, Tennessee, OSU, Texas, and Alabama. All of those, Ohio State and Oregon play in 2 weeks. Penn State plays Ohio State next in November. All right, and then you look at kind of the SEC, which is really the rest of that list. It's the top 7 teams are all SEC Big Ten teams, which is wild to me.
I don't envy Tennessee. They got to play Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, and that's not an easy schedule, right? So I mean, Penn State, as it stands right now, is in a nice position where there's a lot of chaos that can happen above them. That should be really, really good for them. Looking ahead,
Texas has the Red River rivalry next week, and then they have to follow it up with Georgia. Both of them are at home. They don't have to travel for either, but that's a bad 2 weeks.
Right. But Alabama and we get in just over a little over a month, we get Alabama and Tennessee. So that's going to sort itself out. Alabama also has to they get Oklahoma towards the end of the year. We got Vanderbilt this week. So there's so much that can happen. Obviously, Tennessee's got a rough schedule, but the SEC is going to kind of cannibalize themselves. Obviously, those are still high-quality losses for those teams. But Penn State, if you can go out and you can beat USC, get another ranked win, 2 ranked wins on your resume, coming back for Wisconsin and then Ohio State, that's going to be the marquee matchup of the year for the Nittany Lions, as it always is. And they've got to be able to take care of business this year more than ever.
Yeah, it's this year. We've said it all year long. This is do or die. If they don't make the playoff, it's a very, very hot. It's in fuego, the seat that James Franklin sits on. So,
it could end up being a matchup where Penn State gets Ohio State twice this year.
Yeah, there were murmurs. There were murmurs on ESPN yesterday where they're already writing out Oregon out of the Big Ten championship game, and some are out there looking at Penn State as the victors of the Big Ten championship game. So maybe you hope Penn State loses the November 2nd matchup and gets Ohio State in the championship game the following week, but never going to root for a loss. It is hard, however, to beat the same team twice. So kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Right, and obviously Oklahoma or Ohio State has to play Michigan as well. Ohio State has to play Penn State, Oregon, OSU. But for Penn State, again, what matters is they're undefeated in the conference. They're undefeated overall, 4-0. And now you just got to keep it rolling. You got to win big against UCLA, I think. I think to me you have to keep it a 3-score game because the people that are right behind, Penn State in the rankings, the Miamis of the world who laid an egg against Virginia Tech, probably should have lost that. Missouri, as well. And then obviously you got Big Ten teams in Michigan and USC. So I mean, there are 4 Big Ten teams in the top 10 in Michigan, Penn State, Oregon, Ohio State. The rest are all SEC teams and a random Miami there who really doesn't deserve to be there at this point. But miraculously, they walked out of that game Friday night with a win. So Penn State's kind of in the driver's seat. It'll be interesting to see how they continue to drive and follow that path. But until then, it's just kind of a wait and see. But we're going to talk a little bit more about life around college football when we come back for the third and final segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. Welcome back to the third and final segment of the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network. I'm Jared. He's Kevin. Kevin, like we talked about in the second segment, there's a lot that went on throughout college football on Friday, Saturday night, especially.
Yeah, I think the biggest headline, probably the biggest headline, is Georgia, Alabama. We can talk about that one next. But Virginia Tech, Miami, and then the ACC comes out, and what a bogus decision. That's a touchdown. Virginia Tech won that game. I am not. That is, to me, ACC is protecting their one shot at the playoff, and I'm not. I'm going to call it.
Certainly how it looks.
I'm going to call it a conspiracy because time has expired. Receiver catches it 2 feet and his ass hits down on the ground, is laying on top of another player. Play is over. Then DB rips the ball out of his hands. How is that not a touchdown? And then why the ACC even said that it's an incomplete pass is because that the Miami player touched it while being out of bounds. The play's over. He's in the end zone with possession. That is a touchdown. I don't buy that at all. It's the most bullshit excuse I've ever heard. And officiating has been god-awful. ACC, was it the Big 12 refs that Penn State had against West Virginia? They were dog water. And then even the officiating last night for Penn State was awful. So officiating's been terrible all year long, and this is just another one in the another feather in the cap of the officials. It's Virginia, and I hate Virginia Tech. I have a bunch of friends who went there, and I cannot stand them. One of my friends is like, they're gonna run the table this year, and I was like, they have to play both Boston College and Clemson. Like, you're not running the table at all. But he's like, I need the copium to justify the loss to Miami. I was like, whatever you want, man. Like, Virginia Tech's not running the table. Like, I actively root against Virginia Tech. I do root for Brent Pry, so I'm kind of in a catch-22 there. I do want Brent Pry to be successful, but not at the help of Virginia Tech. So I think I'm more pro Virginia Tech than I have been in many years. But geez Louise, Virginia Tech won that game, and if I am a Virginia Tech fan, like, I am knocking on the doors of the ACC office. Like, we are going to bust
that would be my lawsuit to get out. Like FSU, who also lost to SMU. The ACC is a tire fire. The teams that you would expect to be at the top, the North Carolinas of the world, they gave up a 20-point lead on Saturday night to Manny Diaz and Duke. And now Diaz and the Blue Devils are undefeated. They're 5-0, 1-0 in the ACC. They're unranked, but they're going to start turning some heads. You know, Manny Diaz is doing a great job down there. I hate to give credit to Duke in anything that I do. It's just not in my DNA. I can't stand it. But again, you know, Coach Manny Diaz is doing a great job. Bill O'Brien, again, Boston College had another win. But Clemson is on that doorstep too. But they right now, if you kind of look at it, the way that the playoffs are shaking out, the ACC team could be that five seed that has to host a game that first round.
Yeah, the ACC is definitely going to be hosting a playoff game. There's no way that conference champion is anything like, and the fact that Miami only drops to number 8 is just awful. But they do have to go to Louisville. So yeah, Florida State, dude, losing what 42-16 to SMU. Dude, that makes me happy to see just the demise of Florida State after the debacle last year. Let's get to Alabama, Georgia. Did you watch the end of that game? No, you weren't there.
We did watch a little bit of the end of it, waiting for James Franklin.
The back-to-back touchdown plays. Georgia's down. They force a punt. One play, 67 yards, and you're like, to pull ahead by one. And then they kick off to Alabama. One play, 75 yards from Ryan Williams, the 17-year-old college freshman. What a thrilling end. And this is after Georgia spotted Alabama, 30 points? They were down 30
they went
to
out
7.5. So
Alabama came out hot.
So I mean, just what an awesome game. I only turned it on after I was watching the score during the Penn State game, and then Carson Beck even had a chance to win it, but he throws a pick in the end zone. So if you were able to flip over to that's the game of the season so far. I think Lee Corso's prediction that there won't be a single undefeated team in college football is very much going to come to fruition. Kentucky going down to Ole Miss, I was trying to watch that in 12 o'clock window. I had quad box going for multi-view on YouTube TV, but big win for Kentucky. Ole Miss looking like little puppies. Jackson Dart only 261 yards passing after he eviscerated Penn State last year for about 850. So, credit Kentucky. That's a rising program. I think SEC. If you're in the SEC and you have Kentucky on your schedule, you got to circle them now.
Yeah, and I mean, there's just so much that's going to happen now. A lot of players that should have had their Heisman moments or could have had their Heisman moments didn't. One of the players, and obviously we had a good night for our teams, Kevin, that aren't Penn State. Arizona takes down Utah.
My boys.
And Boise State dismantled Washington State. Ashton Jeanty is an incredible specimen. I believe he's well over. I think he has 864 yards through 4 games, and a multitude of touchdowns. He's well on his way to rushing for over 1,000 yards, if not 2,000 yards, this season. So obviously the Broncos, good times in Boise. But yeah, I mean, there's just a lot. There's so much more that's going to happen. We touched on that in the second segment. But for Penn State, they're 4-0. They control their destiny. That's what matters.
Is Ashton Jeanty your September Heisman?
Yes,
that man is
without a doubt
10.3 yards per carry. Are you kidding me? And it's not like he's only carried the ball 5 times. He has 82 carries and 13 touchdowns. Like that's video game numbers. Ironic that NCAA 25 is back, but like those are video game numbers. Now, it's Georgia Southern, Portland State, and Washington State are 3 of the opponents that he's played. But 25 carries for 192 against Oregon. He's doing it against everybody. But
right, and he's not even playing a full game against the others.
Yeah. The guy's having an incredible season.
That's the scary thing. Like,
do you have his odds for Heisman?
I do not. But yeah, I mean, Washington State, he gets 26 carries. He averaged 10 yards a carry. He had a 64-yard run that was super impressive. Portland State, he didn't play much in the second quarter or after the second quarter. He had 11 carries for 127 yards.
Ashton Jeanty is currently 4th in the Heisman odds, right around plus 1,000, plus 1,100.
Would imagine Travis Hunter's up there as well.
Jalen Milroe, Cam Ward, Travis Hunter.
Yeah. And Travis Hunter's having a great year. Colorado is wild. But
you have to be on a ranked team. You have to be on a ranked team though to win the Heisman.
Yeah. I mean, the good news is they have primetime, man. That's all that matters. But Kevin, I think we've reached the point where there's not much more we can talk about other than the fact that Penn State is still undefeated. They handled business. They dominated again, and now you need another dominant performance against UCLA, so that when you're flying out to Los Angeles to take on USC at the Coliseum, that you're ready to go and ready for a nice little wake up call to USC in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think celebrate today, celebrate last night. Obviously, get your rest and celebration in on Sunday like today, and just get ready for UCLA. It's take care of business. Early lines, 28 points. You got to win by 25 plus. I don't care if you cover on a 28-point spread, but go out, be dominant, hold the opponent to minus 19 yards rushing in the second half type things. And yeah, that matchup in LA is going to be one for the ages.
Yeah, I think it will be. I think that's going to be a nice little tone setter for the rest of the season, good, bad, or indifferent. The important thing, though, for them is to go in there and get another ranked win. That could and very well might be a top 10 matchup in LA. The Trojans have Minnesota this week. Then they have Penn State there. But depending on what happens ahead of them, it's very well possible it could be a top 10 matchup. And Penn State desperately needs a top 10, even another ranked win, top 25 ranked win, to boost their resume. I think they have that type of talent, and I think they can get it done. But first is UCLA, and you got to win big. You got to win. You got to cover, and then some. And I think they can do it if they want. If the cards fall where they should, then I would expect a nice cover and then some against UCLA. Get some of those younger guys in if you're able to do it.
Yeah, certainly. And I think the only thing we can hope for with USC is that it's not at noon.
Right, and I don't think that it will be. That's going to be.
It can't be at noon, and it can't be that 10:30 Pac-12 after dark. Those are my two requirements. Let's get the 3:30 on CBS.
And looking at the top 25 schedule for that week, you've got 2 Friday night games at UNLV, who looked great, by the way, without their quarterback. You've got Utah and Arizona State Friday night. The beloved Broncos against Hawaii. That's at 11 p.m. Saturday, October 12th. That is such incredible thing. But you've got Florida, Tennessee, which isn't great, but that's a flex game. That's a 3:30 or 4:30 or 6 or 8 p.m. start. I would expect that game to start at 3:30, just given how Florida is. You got Georgia and Mississippi State. You got Oregon and Ohio State. That should be your primetime game. I 100% think that's going to be a primetime game. It should be. Ole Miss LSU is already a primetime game.
Is Fox going to put Washington and Iowa as big noon? Because they can't rob us. Like, the 2 biggest games for the Big Ten are both on the West Coast. Neither of those
rivalry.
Neither of those should be at noon. They're going to be one of those games is going to be at noon.
That weekend of football is great.
Yeah.
But yeah, obviously you don't want to look past UCLA. But again, for Penn State, there's a lot at stake here in the month of October. You get past USC, then you get another bye week, which is wild to say. Wild to think, or not another bye. Yeah, you get another bye week because then they don't play again until the 26th when they head to Camp Randall. So it'll be very interesting to see kind of how this all shakes out. But for now, Penn State's undefeated. They're 1-0 in the Big Ten, and they welcome UCLA this Saturday. And Kevin and I will be back again later this week to talk about what the Bruins are bringing to the Big Ten and Beaver Stadium Saturday afternoon for Fox's Big Noon kickoff. We'll talk to you again later this week. For Kevin Quigley, this has been Jared Prugar on the Lashing Out podcast on the Nittany Sports Now Network.